Welcome back, everybody, to another Productivity Like a Pro podcast episode with my dear friend Paco Cantero. And we will dive into a very important topic today, team communication. And something many out there suffering is consistent interruptions, not being able to focus on what matters due to interruptions, problems finding information due to people asking you where's information. You have to ask people, and the bigger the company, the worse it gets. So that's why we want to tackle this issue now with our team communication system based on iCore. And we will dive into this as we are close to publish our iCore Journey book. It's another good moment to talk about some of the topics that we tackle in there as well. And obviously in our iCore Journey course inside the membership.
Paperless Movement, your productivity, your way.
Paco, what is the main issues with team communication? Do we have any team communication issues in our team?
Well, fortunately, no. We can state that, okay, because iCore is not only good for the individuals, but also for the team. And well, if a methodology cannot design and prepare you to communicate with the different team members, it wouldn't be a methodology. This is something that we have deeply studied. We have drawn, I think, that important conclusions, okay, because I think that the most important thing about the methodology is that you can implement anything that methodology explains or trying to solve, okay, because I think that people, well, at least me, is a little fed up of finding methodologies or processes or whatever that they are completely impossible to implement, and that creates a kind of frustration or even thinking if you are not smart enough. And I think that that's what we try not to produce by using iCore, okay? Because I think that it's based on common sense. Right now, I think that during this podcast episode, we're going to tackle different ways busy professionals and teams, okay, above all, can handle how to improve their team communication system, because the main purpose of this system is making communication between team members smooth, okay? It should run pretty easy, pretty straightforward. You shouldn't think about what does the methodology says about this, okay? Because I think that the moment that you need to really memorize the thing, the processes, the workflows, whatever, then it doesn't make any sense at all. And that's what we're going to try to avoid by explaining some approaches. It would be quite straightforward, okay? But I just start saying that we are always looking for efficiency, okay? No matter if we refer iCore to the individual, the busy professional, or the whole team, it's efficiency that matter, okay? And talking about team communication, that efficiency is made or achieved by working with a word that we love, okay? We both love because it's so easy for a non-native to pronounce it, that it's working asynchronously, okay? Working asynchronously, it's really the crucial thing, okay? Because the opposite of working asynchronously is what you have just said, that it's interruptions, wasting time, wasting energy. At the end, it's everything but team communication. Also, the team suffers, the individual suffers, and at the end, it's a big mess, especially when you are, because we always say the same, this is prepare to work with a ton of information, a ton of action, okay? That's the beautiful thing about the iCore methodology, is that you can leverage no matter, okay, the amount of information, people, or whatever. And well, based on that, we can start talking about the two main approaches so people can understand little by little what this story is all about. And the two approaches are, the first one, avoid interruptions. This is something that should be ingrained in any team member, okay? Interruptions equals not being efficient, okay? It's a waste of energy. It's kind of annoying. I guess that people in the corporate world don't like at all that type of guy who comes to your desktop, okay? And then you say, what the heck he's gonna tell me now, okay? that creates, well, that friction moment. Then obviously you got evidence that the thing that you were thinking about is gonna be made by that guy. And at the end, he will leave with, well, maybe he's calm, but I'm not, okay? And that's something that we need to
That's
avoid.
something that many in big corporate, even smaller companies probably suffer a lot in the end of the year, where everybody tries to achieve their goals. you see a peak in these interruptions where you can decide, will you help the others to achieve their goals, or will you be able to achieve your goals and interrupt therefore others to achieve your goals? It's a mess, and that's something that can really be avoided by working really asynchronously. And it sounds so well. It sounds like, well, you have no idea how this works in corporate. And so, well, I was suffering this for 8 years, and Paco is running 4 businesses in parallel, and we implemented this in I implemented it back in corporate as a team member, and then later as a team leader as well. So there's no excuses. It's possible to change your surroundings when you start to change yourself first. And this is what we always advocate at the Paperless Movement and with the ICO methodology. The moment you start implementing these concepts and workflows in your own work life, you will see how others around you will start adapting the same things. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the circumstances that you are in during in corporate or in your small business or whatever. The moment you start changing and implementing these concepts and workflows, people around you will start changing as well. You will see that, because what we achieve with iCore is a work style and lifestyle of less friction and easy to find information, and all these things. Removing all the friction points in your work will remove stress and your anxiety, and then other people want to have this as well. And that's something that I personally experienced for myself when I stopped complaining about how everything should be, and then instead of, I created, and that's what we will talk about now, these communication rules for myself, but then also stick to your own rules, and then people automatically adapt to this around you as well, and as they think it's something good. That's why the power of using common sense to approach your team or your colleagues makes all the sense. And that's why ICO is all based on common sense and words that we use on a daily basis. And that, as you said, Paco, that is not made up in a way that it's impossible to implement or just for specific use cases. It needs to be as flexible as enough that it is doesn't matter what industry you apply this to, because the business processes behind all these issues are always the same, no matter the business you are in.
Yes, because it's important that the whole thing interiorizes all this stuff, because if people start not believing in what they are doing, they are probably ending up not doing it at all. Okay. Yeah. And then exactly, everybody's going to try to solve their own lives without thinking about the team. Okay. And that's what we try to avoid. That's why we double down on the concept of using common sense. Okay. Rules, protocols, procedures that anyone can perfectly understand, because it makes sense for them. So the moment that the whole team is aligned applying this is when you see how you can leverage all these workflows that has been pretty well defined and simplified to the most. Okay, that's what we have done, and that's why we have figured it out, how we have been trying many things until we have concluded the things that we introduced to you. Okay, so it's a distilled information based on testing constantly with real work, with real people, okay, people of all kinds of profiles, as Tom has said, all kinds of industries, and it works, okay, because we have received the feedback, we have tested by ourselves, and then we have started polishing and improving these procedures. So, well, yeah, the two different approaches, so people don't get distracted or confused, is number one, it's avoid interruptions. And the second one is really interiorizing how powerful our beautiful concept of single source of truth, that it's one of the core elements, talking about concepts here in iCore, how it's really important to be understood by the whole team, because the moment that they really understand that, it's the moment that you can start applying it to many different and multiple different situations or scenarios. Okay, the moment that you try to memorize just 3 steps and then you don't know why those steps make sense, is the moment that a methodology, a workflow, a process, or whatever, it's impossible, because you're going to find endless situations that you need to find to solve. Okay, and it's by understanding the processes that we explained, the workflows and the concepts, is how you are able to implement them. So to avoid interruptions, to start with the first approach, okay, it's important and crucial, I would say, okay, we need to make all those bold statements, okay, that every single member of the team needs to know how to get in touch with some other team member. Okay, you have to have different channels and know how to use each of them sequentially, depending on the time response that you need. So first off, depending on how quickly you need to receive a reply, that's why we will define what urgent really means, okay? Because obviously the things for me are urgent, okay? And the things coming from the others are not. That's the main rule, and that cannot be possible, okay? That's why we will define what urgent means. But this is important because anyone, before reaching out to any other team member, should ask himself or herself, when do I need this? Okay, when determines the channel that you're gonna choose between the four of them. It's not good to just think, well, let's have a meeting. Okay, I think that that's the worst starting point of any sentence talking about team communication and the team communication system. Okay, meetings should be the last thing we should think about until we have found out that it's the only way, okay, to make things work. So what's the first channel that we should go the moment that we want to reach out to a coworker or a team member? Well, it's the email or using comments in your project management tool. Okay, we include here emails because we know that many businesses don't use properly or are not able to use their project management system to create comments related to the different objects inside that project management system. It can be a project, a task, or whatever. And that's why they use email. And that's why we are against that, okay? Because the moment that you use correctly the comments, make a link to any item in your project management system, you are giving context to that communication. So it's much easier for the recipient to really understand what you are asking about, okay? We're not gonna go right now into the benefits of context because that's for a whole podcast episode, okay? But the point is that it's not just the message, it's just the information that you are sending to the people you are asking something for, that it's useful, okay? Because the moment that they have the message plus the context, I mean, all the things that are related to that message, is the moment that they can easily reply much faster.
Yeah, and that's also going to the single source of truth that we will tackle later on. But this is already an access point of the single source of truth to talk about. Again, out of real life in big corporate, I was taking over a team. They had no idea what projects they were working in. I mean, they had, but it was in the end, we figured out 150 projects working parallel and all handled through email communication, chat communication, and ticketing system that, was no proper rules there. And I implemented Asana back then. There was no ClickUp. There was just this one project management tool. And just by doing this for my whole team and just having what you just mentioned, the context, we were able, at least within our team, to have the communication there related to the tasks and projects. And whenever something came up during the meeting, a weekly meeting, we went to the related item inside the project manager and commented it there. If somebody had a question, there was somebody commenting on the item then directly in the project manager without calling, without interrupting. And then at my time, I was able to go through my inbox and check for the comments and reply there. This is real asynchronous work. And why do I bring this up there? It's the perfect example. It was 5 people with me working in Asana. 2 years later, we showed how efficient we've been working in Asana. So 1,000 people were working in Asana in the end of the 2 years, cross-department wise, because all of them saw the advantage that we all now look at the same single source of truth, and nobody was doing email communication anymore. And if you went through the ICOR journey as well, then you know that for email, we consider it the outer world, where we try in a perfect world that we get from email just outer input. So like clients, vendors, people like that who are not working inside the team or the company. And therefore, you can streamline communication and focus on one place. And it becomes worse if you combine it with messaging. That's the next step that we will talk about. We have so many, and myself, I remember clearly when you get a message through, it was back then, it was still Skype, I think, and Microsoft Chat. And then Google Chat came around. Yeah, exactly. We had a combination of Microsoft and Google Chats, and you got from all over the place messages just because people thought they will reach me easier through messaging, then there's way. And that's where we talk about the next step, the rules to implement, and then stick to these rules where people realize they don't get you much faster going through messaging, but they reach you better through email, for example, as Paco described. That's the use case that we have in most companies still. How do we tackle this?
Well, the point is that there's a need of making a commitment between the team members, okay, that it's based on the time response. I mean, if we are going to use as our main channel the email or the comments in our project management tool, we need to define a time response. Okay, for example, 12 hours, 24 hours. It depends on your business and your needs. A time response that all the team is committed to, so that the moment that I send an email, the moment that I create a comment in my project management, I know that somebody will take care of that and I will receive a reply within that time frame. That's what reduces the anxiety. That's what promotes and encourages working asynchronous, because the sender is sending the message in the right moment, and the recipient, the receiver, will check it out, distill, process it correctly, and giving a reply within that time frame. Okay, and exactly with the messaging. The messaging, we are gonna see this protocol of channels, or this order of channels that we are explaining right now, is based on how quickly do I need to receive a reply, but also how do I interrupt my colleague. Okay, we try to avoid interruption, but we also try to receive the reply when we need it. Okay, because if I can receive a reply, I don't know, 8 hours from now, why the heck I'm gonna interrupt someone who's doing something, kill his focus time, his task, whatever, to something that it can perfectly wait, because I guess that that person is doing the right thing at that moment. So the moment that we start creating those boundaries, that for me it's respect, okay, and we all are aligned into that time response, that should be something that the whole team states, all the people inside the team agree on that, and then they are all committed to implement that on a daily basis. Because the difference between using email or comments in the project management and the second channel, that is messaging, is the time response.
Yeah, I just wanted to add again another example as I was working there in IT. It was strange because if you're in IT and you're working on tickets that you get from the business to work on, you have an SLA, a service level agreement, where you perfectly write down the response time, and depending on the priority levels that you agreed with the business, that they are aware whenever they open a ticket, they have to wait 24 hours, and then there are urgent things that we have to respond within 1 hour, for example. So how can it be that we have on this level these SLAs, but within our own team and the work cross department, we don't apply this? So everybody can message and expect a response immediately. And that's what we rolled out there as well. It's nothing different than an agreement, which is just saying how much time it takes until you get a response from me via email. That's also where, by sticking to rules, people say, oh, you're so strict and you have to be flexible and so on. You can be flexible by having structure and sticking to the rules. Then you are flexible because then you know exactly what you can do and what you can't do. But when people, and again, back from example, went the other way around, instead of creating a ticket, they directly reached out. And I thought they get better service and faster service. And if people then also respond to this and say, yeah, I do this, well, then they got a response within 5 minutes instead of the 1 hour that is in the SLA. So this is going crazy. So that's why it's so crucial on all levels to stick to these rules. And it sounds so strict, but it will release so much stress for all people part of this team communication system here.
Yes, and the beautiful thing about this is that little by little you can add subtleties that make this team communication system that we are explaining to your own needs. For instance, something that we have done, because we use messaging the moment that we need a reply in less than 6 hours. Okay, so whenever we see that a message comes in, it means that I should prioritize my reply before checking the emails, for instance. No, that's what we mean by using one channel or the other. But what happens if, because 6 hours, for instance, here we are just, again, showing examples. Okay, you can set to 3 hours, 4 hours, 40 hours, whatever you may consider, okay, depending on the channel. The thing is asking yourself, when do I need this? And based on that, every team member should know what channel they should use. And then we say, okay, 10 respond less than 6 hours for our messages system. But what happens if I really need something urgent, or that I consider that I should receive a reply as soon as possible? The recipient finishes the work that he's doing right now. Well, we have created a color code, pretty simple, that is just an orange dot or a red dot. And depending on the dot that it's at the beginning of the message, we know what that means. Okay, if we see an orange dot, for instance, we know that that person, the person that receives the message, as soon as he finishes the work or the task that he's at hand right now, he should take care of that message. Okay, and if we use a red dot, that means that he should stop doing that thing immediately because it's urgent. Okay, and urgent, it means that it has an impact, a direct impact and significant impact in the business, in the team. That's why we should consider when we are using a red dot, because if everything is urgent, then the system gets collapsed. But by doing this, people really understand the meaning of urgent. They know that, man, I can wait for this. I can wait for how long? And then, depending on that reply, then they use one channel or the other. So here you can see that we are creating protocols, rules to reply within 24 hours, within 6 hours, and even if I need an immediate reply, I don't need to make a phone call. I don't need to create a meeting. I just send the message, and I know that people will be aware of that. But obviously, let's move on to the next channels, because we are not robots, okay? And we are not stupid people, okay, who thinks that, well, with that, a business can run perfectly, or any team. No, we do believe in phone calls and also even in-person interactions, that those are the two next channels that we're going to explain, because they are the ones that create a really interruption in the recipient, in the person who needs to give you a reply.
Yeah, I just want to double down again as you described the orange dots and red dots. Again, I described what the SLA is, and there we had the different priorities, and based on the priority, you had a specific time length, 1 hour, 4 hours, 24 hours, something like that. Here, we have a different approach. It's not about time length that we promise when an orange dot or red dot is sent. Orange dot is really just after you finish the meeting or the deep focus work that you do. I can perfectly wait with this with this orange dot until you get back, but please finish whatever you are working on. And the red dot is even during a meeting. It's so important that you respond right now and interrupt whatever you're doing right now. So this is really crucial. But first of all, the orange dot means it could be 5 minutes where you just finish your work and you get back, but it could be also 3 hours if you just started your deep work focus, right? So this is what people are aware of when it comes to these priority levels. And the thing is then to stick to this as well, that you actually reply right after the meeting, that you immediately reply during a team meeting or whatever to a urgency, that you general response time less than 6 hours, you stick to this as well, because only then people can trust that when they use these channels, that they also get a response as it was planned. Otherwise, if you don't do this and you let it slip, then people will start calling, and that's what we will have now. That's what you can then do. If there's no response after 6 hours, you still have the chance to then call the person and see, didn't you see this? And things like that can happen. And then you can still call them. But to get to a phone call, it's really one of the last instances to do that, because that's directly interrupting. Obviously, if somebody's sitting in a meeting and the phone is ringing, and it's always distracting. And also another option then, and that's something probably you want to talk about as well, is a lot of back and forth. When you realize it's much quicker to quickly talk about things, then you pick the phone, but you went through the first instances first before you end up to having the call, or then later on the in-person interactions.
Yes, because it's important to know also to be aware that whenever you make a phone call, if we just focus that from an efficiency perspective, you don't want to be rude, okay? You cannot be as direct using a phone call than you are when you are sending a message, okay? You need to talk. How are you? Everything is okay? I don't know. You are getting into a channel that requires a certain level of conversation, of communication, that thinking about efficiency is not the best efficiency possible. The point is that the moment that we see, as Tom has said, that there's a lot of back and forth, let's be pragmatic, okay? Many times talking is better than writing, especially the moment that we have perfectly set up this protocol. The moment that you receive a phone call is because the previous channels are not useful. And that makes the difference. Because, for instance, I came from a situation where I was receiving, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 phone calls every day. That's impossible to be productive, receiving so many calls, that most of them could be just be managed using the level one, okay, the email or just a comment, because they weren't urgent at all. So the moment that you set up this protocol and this workflow, and then people start applying it, the moment that you receive a phone call is because it makes sense, okay? Because the last step would be the in-person interactions, okay? Because we can avoid that desktop attack that we described at the beginning, because it doesn't make any sense. The things that make sense is, okay, let's have a meeting. And also we handle them different, okay? Because let's have a meeting is not, well, let's schedule it and put it immediately. No, unless it's necessary, we have created the agenda meeting protocol for teams, that it's there an item, an object in our project management system where all the different team members write down the things that wants to be discussed in person during a meeting, okay? And then we handle all those items just in 1 week that we have every Monday, okay? So that everything is batch. We are conscious that many things that we have written down the moment that Monday arrives are useless, okay? It doesn't make any sense. So imagine if we go the other way around, that it's, well, let's have a meeting. We start discussing, improvising, dedicating time for one thing that just the next week would be considered nonsense, okay? So imagine the moment that you start creating these boundaries, how you leverage your productivity effortlessly. That's the most important thing about iCore, that helps you implement processes or workflows that are easy to implement, and also the own workflow creates the things effortlessly. I think that that's pretty important, okay, without any friction, okay, without any friction. And I think that by setting up in stone, I would say, those different 4 channels and the principles behind this criteria, teams will perform much better.
Yeah, and it makes me really sad, actually, when you see these jokes, right? That you can buy cups where it says on front, this meeting could have been email. This meeting could have been an email. And this just shows all these business jokes and corporate jokes about meetings and interruptions and all this, that it is a common thing, and that people, are sarcastic about this and laugh about this. But there's an actual solution for this. There are far too many meetings, and I was suffering in so many meetings where 20 people sitting there, and then you have a 2-hour meeting and there's just a 2-minute interruption where they ask you a question immediately and then you have to answer that, and that's it. And that's something where we come to the next step. If you have a proper single source of truth, these meetings don't need to be in place in general. So something, again, like the cup example with the quote there, it's the same for doing jokes about project managers consistently asking for status updates and interrupting people during their work to ask what is going on, how is the status of your task, and things like that. That, to me, is just a clear indicator that they have no system in place. If the system would work perfectly, then the project manager doesn't need to reach out to the people, as the system would tell him exactly the status of the project and the different tasks going on there.
Yeah, and it's important because this is a second approach. The first one is avoiding interruptions using those different channels in the right order, those 4 channels that we have listed. The second is the moment that everybody in the team perfectly understands and interiorizes the concept of a single source of truth, okay? That it's everyone knows where to create and store any information on action, so they don't need to ask anyone, where do I store this? They perfectly know. And also, everyone knows where to find and retrieve that information or action, okay? Because this is important, because there's an statistic, I think that coming from Asana, that said that 60% of the time is spent searching for information. So imagine 60% of the time. So the moment that you perfectly define your single source of truth, everyone knows where to store any information on action, and everyone knows where to search that information on action and retrieve it, okay? Is the moment that you change how your team works, okay? Because that's the perfect definition of efficiency, okay?
And now I hear the
we
people already saying again, especially bigger corporates, yeah, but it's impossible to create one single source of truth where you store all the information. And that's again, I implemented this in a 300,000 employee company. It is not about having one system as the single source of truth. And that's where the misconception is. It's understanding where different information types are stored in different single source of truths that you will have there, but realizing then where to go to find the relevant information. And then you can, that would be the perfect world again, to have one tool where everything is centralized. So you have one single source of truth that you actually look into, but it links out to all the other systems that have the relevant information. And that makes it so powerful. And again, to me, no excuses to say it's impossible. We cannot have one app for everything. And that's true. It's impossible to have one app for everything, especially in bigger businesses. So
yes, and that's the point, that due to misconceptions about the concepts, people think that it's not going to work, okay, because they don't really understand what's behind, okay, and we would need another episode about the single source of truth, but here we are going to quickly list and mention several examples or best practices to really understand that a single source of truth is that, okay, that people know where to store something that they have created, and everyone knows how to quickly retrieve that information or action, okay, no matter what it is, okay? People tend to think that a single source of truth is just a specific software or a specific tool or just something, a hard drive, a folder, or whatever. In fact, it is, but the point is that the definition of single source of truth goes far beyond. For instance, the moment that we centralize all the things related to a task within that task, okay, the conversations, the interactions, the reviews, the documents, everything, that's so powerful, okay, because you don't need to go anywhere to find all the information related to that object, and you can leverage that not only to tasks, but also to projects, to work streams, to whenever any other output element, as we call them in the ICOR methodology. Also, another example, conversation threads. The moment that all the conversations follow a thread and everything, all the interactions coming from all the team members and even people from the outer world, okay, are within that thread, that creates a lot of calmness, I would say, and control over everything, because just by going there to the thread, you get all the information. You know where you should put your opinion and how things will go. And last but not least, for instance, using custom views in any project management tool, for instance, it's quite impressive, okay? Because imagine the moment that you create a view that is just filtered with the weekly goals that the team should be aligned towards that week. Just with one click, boom, you got the information there. You don't need the moment that you are out of control, okay, because you are during a storm, okay, of meetings or interruptions or whatever. You go back there and then you are aligned again with the weekly goals that the team have previously set during the weekly planning, and then you go back to the right path. Those are just simple best practices, simple examples that you can put into action right now, immediately, and the combination of those protocols to avoid interruptions, plus all the members knowing and workingly, proactively into the single source of truth, no matter what it is. I think that just with those two approaches, the team communication management works really smoothly and efficient. That is what we have stated at the beginning of the podcast episode.
exactly, Paco. Nothing more to add for this episode. Thanks, guys, everybody out there listening to this. And we will catch you up next time with another episode. Have a good time.
See you.